Welcome to the Carl Jackson Podcast. We are now on Local Now, and I'm excited about it. This is our first episode since we have launched on Local Now, so that's a cool thing, and it's a great opportunity for the network and for this show. Tonight is a great podcast because we're going to have a controversial guest. Dr. Danielle Roberts is my guest, and a lot of you know her from a very interesting scandal that happened a while back, and but that's not why she's here. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but she's mainly here to talk about an array of topics. And what I like about her is she's a very genuine person, and a lot of times what you see on the news is not who the person really is. So I wanted her to be a guest on the show, on the podcast. And I think that you're going to enjoy this interview. This was, of course, recorded in my office. We're still doing the Zoom thing because it seems like it's getting worse, this whole pandemic situation. I don't know how this thing is going to play out. I was hoping to start having guests in studio. And at some point, I think that will happen. But right now, we're still taking precautions and doing things the correct way. So here we go. Let's watch. Welcome to the Carl Jackson Podcast. I am excited and delighted that you guys are listening and watching on CJC Network and listening on Spotify and Apple iTunes. I have an amazing guest with me today. I'm a big fan of hers, despite the controversy that we'll get into later. But I'm a big fan of hers. I believe that she has an amazing heart. I believe she has an amazing story. And we were chatting it up a few days ago. I asked her to come on the show. She was very reluctant, considering a lot of things that people have assumed about her and her personality and her character. But I wanted to have a conversation that you guys could listen to and watch, because I felt like everybody that watches mainstream media, people that watch the news, we've all come to the realization that a lot of times they make up stuff. A lot of times they lie to us. A lot of times they give us false narratives that fit their agenda. We are now seeing that even extremely, it's extremely passive right now when you look at all the concepts of the CDC and, take the shot, should you not, vaccines, should you not take a vaccine. We're now starting to see more and more of these people on the news, whether it's CNN, whether it's even Newsmax or Fox. Everybody has their agenda and their point of reference. And so people paint stories. When I saw this young lady, this doctor on Dateline, the first thing that I thought was, this woman is being set up. But I didn't know her whole story, and I didn't know her. So I wanted to get to know her for myself. I've gotten to know her a little bit. And so I'm going to introduce you guys to her if you don't know. And if you do know, I want to introduce you guys to Dr. Danielle Roberts, and we're going to have a conversation about everything. So, Doctor, how are you doing today?
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to come. And mostly thank you for your courage and for having and holding a space where people can come and talk about controversial topics without all the spin and the slander and the censorship and all of that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And thank you for accepting the invitation. You could have easily been like, no. So thank you for, giving a brother a chance. So here's the thing. I want to start with your credentials. Let's talk a little bit about your life and experiences, because I think a lot of people would like to know just who you are as a person. There's so many narratives spin on people's agenda that sometimes you don't even know who they're talking about as a person. So let's start from the beginning. Who are you? Where are you from? And how did you get into holistics, right? You do holistics, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a medical doctor. I'm an osteopath, but certainly my focus over time has been honed much more at functional medicine, prevention, really helping people to be able to get well. And I'm happy to share more about that for sure.
Yeah, so please.
Who am I? Oh, gosh, it's, I'm not going to give you my whole life story here just for brevity's sake, but I think the important parts, let's see. I grew up in New York on Long Island, Strong Island. I grew up in a little town called East Mauritius, and basically, from super humble beginnings. My mom and my dad are awesome, hardworking people. Dad never finished high school. Mom was a waitress and a bartender for years, and then eventually grew herself into getting her real estate license. And her and my dad eventually created a corporation or a partnership to flip houses and all of that stuff. So super humble beginnings. Nobody in my family ever went to college. They busted their butts really for me to have the opportunity to be able to go to college, help me with the first year or so. And basically after that, I put myself through college, put myself through medical school, in a large part, working, doing personal training, teaching aerobics. I worked my way through school to be able to make that possible. So I think those things are important, kind of in giving people a sense of who I am and what I stand for. I did gymnastics for 9 years. That was a huge part of my foundation. So, basically my work ethic growing up, my parents would drive me to, I'd go to school, come home, have a snack, do my homework, eat dinner, go to gymnastics for 3 hours, come home, have some ice cream, watch TV, go to bed.
You're the only child, right?
No.
Oh.
I have 4 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a family of 5.
What made you decide to go down the medical road?
It started with gymnastics. I was very focused. My dream was originally to go to the Olympics with gymnastics. And I started when I was 5 years old. And my mom put me in a little church dance class. It was very cute, Mrs. Rocco's dance class. If Miss Rocco, if you're still around, shout out to you.
Shout out.
And she saw my potential in the dance class, and she thought I'd actually be really good at gymnastics. So I wound up, my mom put me in gymnastics, and pretty quickly I started to move up the levels and eventually worked my way up to level 10 and had qualified for nationals. And at that point in my career, I had been through multiple ankle injuries. I had stress fractures. I had torn the ligaments in my ankles multiple times, not in full, but high grade ankle sprains, for those of you that are athletes and have experienced that. So I was in physical therapy quite a bit. And I thought, at first I thought, gosh, gymnastics was my life. It was my dream. It was my life. It was what I was putting all of my life force into at the time. And I thought, how cool, like these physical therapists are helping people get back to what they love, like making it possible for them to continue to do what they love. And that was like my initial spark. Before that, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to do all sorts of things, but I think that was my initial spark. And after I decided to not, I decided at one point I was just struggling in my gymnastics career. For those of you that know, giant swings around the bars were not my strong point. I was just deathly afraid of them, and I would fly off the bar, and I would all sorts of stuff. I'd hit the bottom and just rip off, and I just couldn't seem to get them. And I tried for years, honestly. I did visualization and all sorts of stuff, and I just couldn't quite hack that with the injuries on top of it. I decided that at that national level, I was gonna bow out and kind of, experience what it was like to have high school life, do some more high school sports. To that point, I had pretty much been, like I said, study, come home, do your homework, go to gymnastics, go to bed. It was a very disciplined childhood. I had a lot of playtime and stuff in addition, but so I think those are the things that fueled me when I couldn't do gymnastics anymore, when I decided not to. I had an injury, which was the final straw, and I was on crutches for a year, and that was in 9th grade. And during that year, you're growing up, you're going through puberty, you're going through all this new, I changed from, I was in my school went from kindergarten through 8th grade. So at that point I changed high school. So it was like a new school, new age group, all this stuff. And I was on crutches for a year. I was just a little lost, and at that time I started struggling with eating as a coping mechanism to deal with my emotions. I was trying to figure out my injuries. I was trying to figure out high school and who I was. And all of those things led me down a path where I wanted to be able to, I wound up struggling with binging, overeating, and things like that. And
really, as small as you are,
well,
like
it's taken me
this big.
it's taken me many years to get where I'm at now, but at the time, with all those different changes going on and all the emotions going on, I didn't have the best coping mechanisms emotionally for all those changes. And
Gotcha.
my dreams for gymnastics were over.
Right.
Where I was funneling all my energy was gone.
Right.
I was uncomfortable in my own body in high school. Like, there's all these bigger kids and I didn't feel so cool or so popular. And I just found a friend in food.
Right.
And it was always there for me.
Right.
And so that, honestly, that is one of the big experiences that I think shaped me. And I tried multiple things at that point. When I recognized the first time I ever caused myself to purge after eating, I was like, whoa, wake up call, and I was like, okay, I need help. I need to do something different.
Did you purge a lot?
It didn't become a massive habit, thank God, because as soon as I chose to do it, as soon as I chose to do it once, and I think this is probably going to be the theme of our conversation, I recognized, this is not a behavior I want to choose. And I think it's important that we take responsibility for those habits or choices or situations immediately. And I wound up going to therapy. I tried Overeaters Anonymous. I tried, I actually entered a study where they were doing a study for Topamax, which is a seizure medication for overeating. I did it all. I mean, you name it. I was dedicated to overcoming this behavior. But I think there was a key point in my life where I recognized, you know what? People give you a label. Doctors give you a label. They diagnose you with something and they say, you're bulimic, you're an alcoholic, you're a this, you're a that. And, we oftentimes then use that as an excuse to not overcome it. And we say, you know what? I have a disease. It's not my fault. I have a disease. It's genetic. My parents had struggled with so and so or addictive behaviors. It's just BS. It's not true. And I think this is such a key moment in my life, and this is such a key moment that I want to share with people, because it's what keeps us small. It's what keeps us entrapped. It's what keeps us enslaved or victimed in our life. And I think that'll be a big conversation piece, considering COVID and the other aspects of my life.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you about that. So you and I had a great conversation a couple of days ago, and I want to kind of dive into some of those topics. I think for the sake of time, there's so many topics that we hit on, but I think the main topic was how our rights are being taken away, whether it's from Black Lives Matter, whether it's as a diversion, whether it's the COVID shot. Do you take it? Do you not take it? I think everybody's missing that all these things are just distractions.
Yep.
Everything that they're doing right now, everything that we're seeing, is just distractions from the main thing that they're really after, which is our freedom. Right. One of the things I wanted to talk about is I remember saying to you that Dr. King, a lot of people don't remember, but Dr. King had a speech that he gave, and the speech was about economic inclusion. And it was about how this thing about black and white wasn't, and the race thing really wasn't the thing that he really wanted to focus on, because civil rights was important, but he was saying what's more important is if black and white came together and we both had this same economic rights as the people that are supposedly in control. And I said to you, I feel that's what got him killed, because I feel like the powers that be do not want us to gather that information, because that information equals freedom. That information equals we can make choices and decisions, how we grow our food, what we put in our bodies, what we listen to on the radio, what we watch on television, all that changes if the economic structure is the same as the people that are in power. So I wanted to hear from you, your perspective of it. I kind of made the analogy about, how they divert, are so divisive from the point of, right now the R. Kelly trial is going on. And I asked you, what's the difference between R. Kelly and Hugh Hefner? And, you were like, whoa, that's interesting, because I never really thought about it. But the difference is that one or both are stories that were created, and they're just diversions. They're just things that they put out there to divide us, to keep us in this place of not knowing or not building our lives correctly. So talk a little bit about your fight, your freedom. I know you believe in freedom. You're a freedom fighter quietly. So what is your take on what I'm saying and my thoughts on it? I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you just threw a lot out there, and I want to break it down for people because there's a big leap, but I think the underlying connection is the same. Even talking about my decision to recognize that bulimia was just a label. And when I woke up from that and I said, you know what, I'm not bulimic. I'm choosing to overeat, and I'm choosing to then purge. And as soon as you own that, as soon as you own, wait a second, I chose this behavior, I can stop this behavior. That is the most powerful moment. And I think this is the underlying theme to everything you just said too. And I'll tie it back to Martin Luther King. But I think one of the biggest things that we struggle with as human beings is taking ownership over our life. There's a part of us that wants to believe that everything could be done for us. Like we don't have to take charge. Somebody's mommy and daddy are going to come save us. Somebody is going to pay our bills. I mean, look at the COVID situation. How many people are on unemployment who mommy and daddy, the government, is now paying for them to hang out? And now you've got to be super honest with yourself. You've got to be super honest with yourself. Are you one of those people who are just deciding to live off of mommy and daddy right now because it's easier, because you want to, or like we need people who are gonna go and create jobs for people, who are gonna be resourceful, who are gonna take initiative, who are gonna be accountable, and even when things get hard, when, I'm going to say this, but when the government creates a situation to disempower people, to make them dependent on the government, to weaken people, are you going to allow yourself to be weakened, or are you going to choose to get stronger, to build your own business, to find your own opportunities, to make it happen so that you can be part of the solution, part of the people creating opportunities, creating solutions, producing value for other people? Or are you going to be one of the people who, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying certain people don't have more privilege than others. I am not saying that you might have to like crawl and scrape yourself to the top just to get a little bit of an opportunity. But we've got the internet, we've got, social media, we've got, people creating apps, we've got all sorts of stuff. And, one of my mentors used to say, you can make excuses or you can make money, but you can't make both.
Well,
And I think this is the key choice for most people. It was for me in overcoming my eating disorder. It was when you start to talk about what you're talking about with Martin Luther King. I think the fact that I think the biggest thing is when you start to hold people accountable or call people out for their dependencies, it's really hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard. We don't want to let those things go, right? We don't want to become an adult. we don't want to do those things. And I think Martin Luther King called people out. He called a spade. And I think we're experiencing some of the same things with COVID. Martin Luther King said, essentially, in your example, that this has nothing to do with these things. It has to do with holding the government accountable or holding people accountable. I mean, you got to remember, we have all this hate and anger at the government. It's not, the government is just made up of people.
Right.
So like there are people in the government that may be struggling, that are making maybe not so good decisions, that are, maybe thinking that controlling people is the best solution to certain situations. And I think we need to help hold people accountable for their decisions. And that's when things get messy. I think that's when Martin Luther King is assassinated, or, when you start to hold people accountable, when you start to call things like they are, and you start to call people out for not taking responsibility, it gets a little messy.
The people of America, the analogy I like to use, is I liken the people of America are like parents, and the kids are the senators and the governors and our president. And what happens is, if we as parents don't raise our children properly and tell them what they need to know, what they don't need to do, what we're going to stand for, what we're not going to stand for, then that child's going to turn into a teenager. And that child, when it becomes a teenager, is going to feel like, you didn't care all this time, so I can get away with anything I want to get away with. Mm-hmm. What we're saying is the teenager. And now the parents are going, wait a minute, respect me, and we're like, no, I don't have to. For years, I didn't have to respect you. Why would I start respecting you now? Right now, we're at that pivotal time where the people have to now go, okay, we've missed the mark. Now it's time to fix the mistakes that we made, that we created. If you follow what I'm saying?
I do. I do. I do think parenting is a great example. I do think that is, similarly at the crux. I mean, at the crux of this, if children aren't held accountable when they're young, they grow up to be adults who aren't held accountable, and I do think this is an issue in our society. I mean, millennials now, and, the whole thing changing to computers and stuff like that. But I think ultimately there's a whole bunch of people that, oh gosh, there's so many examples coming to my mind, but there's a whole bunch of people that can cry victim, I'm going to say. I'm just going to say it, rather than beating around the bush.
Yeah, please.
There's a whole bunch of people that can just cry victim and basically use that as a tool to destroy or go after other people. If let's use the example of Black Lives Matter for a minute. So if we look at Black Lives Matter, I think a lot of people became super emotionally invested in that, and I think it was a distraction, as you said, because ultimately, we're all human. Black, purple, green, blue, whatever. It's not about the color that you are. Right, it's about, are you behaving correctly? Are you upholding your end of the deal? Are you being a responsible human being? You know, are you doing what you're meant to do? And honestly, I know this can sound, coming from a privileged, white, attractive woman, and I said this to you the other day, I am very late to the tea party. You know, I am very, very late.
You didn't know. You didn't know.
No.
Until you experienced it, you didn't know.
Right. And you had mentioned, I think, gosh, I don't remember what it was, Carl, when you mentioned about due process, and you mentioned about two different, you know, like basically like asking people, you know, would you want, if we have a justice system that actually did what it was supposed to do, hold people accountable, right? So if our justice system was there to hold people accountable for destroying value or creating value, you know, this should be measurable, like what was destroyed. And okay, if something was destroyed, how do you now restore that? Not about like, I'm going to treat you differently, like some popularity contest. I'm going to treat you differently if you're Black, or if you're female, or if you're male, or if you're this, or if you're that. And I think ultimately that's what's going on. And it disheartens me, because ultimately two people who were in the same system view that system very differently. You know, and you asked, like, I can't remember the question you asked, but basically it was like, if you had to face the justice system, if you were accused of something, you know, if you were being accused of something, would you want,
yeah, it was something I was talking about, when, we were talking about the justice system, and how, if you walked into the courtroom and everybody that was there were judged by what the opinion was. So in other words, I accuse you right now of robbing a grocery store down the street, and it's all over the press that you robbed the grocery store down the street. And no matter what you say, people now believe that. And they walk into the courtroom, and in that moment, they only judge you by what was said. No evidence of anything. They just say, this is what was said. Now let's give you a punishment. Would you walk into a courtroom that way? Right. And most people say no.
Right. And I had brought up, perfect, that's exactly what you mentioned. Yeah. And I had brought up, it's different for different people even. I mean, number one, you should have due process. Number one, there's innocence until proven guilty. But in our system now, I mean, it's advertised in the media that you did something wrong. You're already started to turn into this villain, this criminal. We have a feeling about criminals, and they're not real people. Like, so there's this whole ball of prejudice that starts to be rolled before you're judged, right? Which is not innocent until proven guilty. It's not, let's hold the best construction of this human being until we see all of the facts. It's very much prejudiced, and the media has a huge influence on the government, but now, or on the justice system, excuse me. But now if you add profiling to that, if you add prejudice to that, what I mentioned to you was, I think a white man and a Black man would answer that question very differently. Like a Black man's going to go, oh my God, no, I don't want to be judged in front of all these people. I mean, like, they have this set of profiling, these prejudices about what Black men behave like and who they are. Whereas a white man is like, yeah, his feeling, I'm guessing, because my feeling was very different until I experienced the recent years of my life. My feeling would have been like, yes, of course, bring me to the justice system. I will be judged by them,
I'm this privileged white woman who's cute, and I don't get it.
Yeah. Like, I would have been like, of course they're fair.
Right.
Of course they will absolutely evaluate this fairly. And now with what I've experienced, no. This is not a measurable justice system. This is not a unbiased, let me look at all the facts and evaluate human behavior system. This is oh, this does not look good in the media. This really looks bad for us. Let's spin this way. Let's influence this. Let's pull this string. Now, from the media to the justice system, they just bury you. I mean, they'll tamper with evidence. They'll create crimes. They'll do whatever that you put a label of sex or child porn or anything like that connected
They're code
to
words.
charge,
They're
you're
code
done.
words. Cult, the word of cult.
Cult, yes, cult.
Those are code words.
Exactly.
They're trigger. There's almost like trigger words that they've trained the masses to automatically think this way when they say this word. It's almost like a trance.
Yeah. And I think this is super important for everybody because I think most people are really scared of being manipulated. I think the reason that those words scare people and why they work so well is because most people have not been trained to critically think, use their mind
For themselves. Yes.
And rely on themselves. Exactly.
Yes. Rely on the God that's in you.
Yes. And this brings us back to that my bulimia decision, that victim. Are you a victim of your choices and behavior, or are you the master? Are you the one responsible? Are you going to do the right thing? And I think that's huge. You know, now we have, I don't know, it's very disheartening to watch all of this happen. You know, we have this system now that you can cry victim and all of a sudden everybody, because, okay, I'm sorry, let me tie it back to my last point. So people are afraid of being manipulated because they haven't been taught to think. They haven't been taught to stand on their own 2 feet. And until they start to take responsibility for their own thinking, for their own evaluation process, that fear is going to remain in place. And those people are going to want other people to think for them. The government, the pharmaceutical companies, the I don't know, the media, you know, exactly. They are 100% do not want to question the integrity of investigative journalism, of the justice system.
Or billionaires, or corporate companies, or government, especially billionaires or tech guys. They don't even question their motives.
Yes.
They just automatically assume you have our backs.
Yes. And I want to encourage everybody who's like teetering on that edge, because it's scary, right? If you start to say, oh, wait a second, I'm responsible for evaluating this information. I have to evaluate whether I should inject this thing into my body or not. And I've got to live with those consequences. I have to decide for myself whether or not I can trust what the media is telling me. Like, wait a second, I have to make a decision about what's being injected into my body and the ramifications of that 20 years from now, based on a media system that you're telling me is now not giving me honest information. Like, whoa. And believe me, I woke up to this 10 years ago because as a doctor who had people's lives in my hands, I had to decide and make decisions and advise people on their lives based on the science that I was being fed from, ideally, good scientific medical journals.
Right, right.
But when you start to have pharmaceutical companies that make money and profit influence what studies can be done and what studies can't be done, or what parts of the studies can be published, the results, and which results can't be published, and you start to slant and distort information, how am I supposed to, as a doctor, make responsible, caring, loving decisions for my patients on information that's not truthful?
That's powerful. Ooh, that's powerful. It's so powerful because, oh my God, that's powerful. Because I know doctors who've literally told me they have representative girls, women who look as good as, I don't know, Kim Kardashian. And they walk into these offices and they get bonuses if they can get these doctors to sell a new drug they never heard of. And doctors sign up for it all the time. Just some cute girl, she's making $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, and all she's doing is she's a rep for a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, no, this is a huge problem. I mean, I went through medical school. There are no nutrition classes. There are no personal training classes. I originally wanted to be an orthopedic spine surgeon. And in college, I had the opportunity to follow one. And I was horrified. I was a personal trainer at the time. And I watched these x-rays of these nails, these big nails that were being put through people's spines to fuse their spines. Now, understand what happens to somebody's spine if you do that. You stabilize these few vertebrae, but now the forces on this vertebrae and this vertebrae, because these can't move, are exponentially increased.
Oh my God.
So now you blow out this disc and you blow out this disc and you need to fuse those, and you blow out this disc and you blow out this disc and you need to fuse those. And eventually you have no movement in your spine. Now, I'm a personal trainer in college. I know this. And I know that a lot of people walking into this doctor's office, I could help. I could make them stronger, make them have more flexibility, help reduce their herniation. And finally I was boiling, and I said to this doctor, I said, don't you ever, how come, doctor, there are these people that have these injuries, and you're recommending surgery right away. Do you ever recommend physical therapy first? And he said to me, when I first started, I recommended physical therapy to everybody, and nobody wants to do the work. So now I just send them straight to surgery.
Wow.
And a part of me died that day. Like, a part of me died that day. And again, this is another example of people don't want to take responsibility, do the work, do what it takes. So destroy my spine because I'm not willing to get on a treadmill, because I'm not willing to lift some weights. Like, this is the crux of the problem in our country right now. I'm not willing to do the critical thinking. I'm not willing to read the studies. I'm not willing to question the media. I'm not willing to find out what's really going on. But your health is on the line. Your family's health is on the line. Your lives are on the line. Our freedom is on the line. I mean, if you don't want to critically think and you want to be a sheep and you want to be a drone, that is the world we're creating if we're not willing to do the work. And I think it's so, so important. So, so important.
Wow, that's when you hear this back, you're gonna be like, did I say all this wonderful stuff? You're gonna be like, man, I didn't even know I was this smart. No, what you're saying today, oh my God, thank you, Lord, for you coming on the show today. Like, I just love you. You're just like, and see, this is the kind of stuff that makes me go, because clearly the powers that be tried to blacklist you. They tried, and you've been quiet, but I'm the type of person, when they blacklist someone, I go, there's something there. There's some beauty there, and they don't want us to know what it is. So that's how I see you. That's how, when I first, read about your story, I was like, yeah, something is up. And now the people that watch on CJC, the people that listen to this podcast, and other places you're gonna go, they're gonna know why. Because what you just said today was powerful. But I want to know, as we wrap this up, I want to know from your perspective, how did it make you feel knowing that you are this person that I'm talking to, and I've gotten to know you a little bit? How did it make you feel seeing how they portrayed it in the media? Like, what was your thought process? Because the whole concept of what happened, people can look it up from their perspective, but I want to know your perspective. What was your thoughts when it finally hit you that I'm no longer here? Now everybody's going to see me as this.
Well, let me just, I guess, you're asking me how I felt about it and my process. And that's, it's a very personal experience that I think unless it's happened to you, it's very difficult to understand. But I do think it's important to share with people and help them and help people understand how powerful our words are, number one, how powerful media is, number two. I mean, those are our words just exponentially amplified so that we influence other people's opinions, and the tremendous effects that those words that started from just a few people have literally been broadcast into an entire international story that has landed 6 different innocent people, in my opinion, in prison. And, you know, threatened the medical licenses of 2 physicians, one of which was already revoked. I'm still fighting for mine. Destroyed an entire community, ripped families apart. I mean, just, I can't even, the amount of value that this company was produced. They were like my own company for one. I mean, the value that I brought, ideally, I'm not going to say I'd like to think. I brought my heart and my soul to my patients. We were having great results. I mean, we were helping people overcome migraines, back pain, neck pain, prevent hip replacements, knee replacements without medication. I mean, blood pressure, cholesterol, you name it. I mean, all of these things can be done without medicine, with a community, with a strong system, with lifting each other up, inspiring each other. My company alone, you know, I won't say just mine. Of course, I had 6 partners, and they were all amazing. And what we built just in that one company that was destroyed is tragic for what it could have done for so many people's lives that could be off medication, preventing injuries, preventing cancer, preventing surgeries, so much time and money and heartache. Now, if you amplify that to all of the companies that my business partner, Keith Raniere, had helped to create, the amount of value that was destroyed and decimated was just huge. Excuse me. But back to your question, how did I feel? I guess I'm avoiding how I felt. Honestly, the first feeling was just shock. Like, I participated in this women's society because of the same reasons I've shared with you, to help empower women, to help hold them accountable, to help lift them up, to help them overcome their own stories, their own limitations, their own victimization patterns, right? Like when I had my eating disorder, you know, I just can't stop myself from eating. No, who else is going to stop me? Like, who else is in here pushing the buttons? You know, as humans, we struggle with this. You know, we struggle with taking responsibility, and women in general have a lot more, are brought up. This is a generalization. It's not every woman. It's not every person. It's not every man that isn't brought up with these issues, with the opposite of these issues. But women typically, especially privileged, white, attractive women, we have a victim card. You know, we have a I'm pretty card. We have a I'm cute, I cry, don't hurt me card, you know, and and we can use those cards to get out of taking responsibility for certain things, for building the skills necessary to support ourselves. And I used to be very angry at the women who didn't, that relied on their looks and their body and their sexuality to find them a man who would take care of them, pay their bills, provide for them, make sure they're safe. Because I felt that they weakened the perception of all women, where we were fighting, right, as women for empowerment, for equal rights, to show that we are responsible and strong, and we can and we will earn the respect from men to be able to have the same influence in the world and bring our gifts of compassion and empathy to the table, because men are amazing and they're responsible and they build shit and they do so many good things, but they're also not raised and cultivated with the same empathy and emotion and compassion, and
there would be no men without women.
They're killing people, in a lot of ways, so we need both, and I think my decision to participate in DOS, my decision to brand women in this organization as an initiation, was so special in so many ways. It was to help women become stronger, to overcome those victim patterns, to be empowered, to hold themselves accountable to their word, what they said they wanted to do, who they said they wanted to be, so that they could bring our gifts of compassion and empathy and love to the business world, to the big corporations, to the men, the billionaires that are running this country. How do we bring more compassion? How do we bring more of that humanity, emotion? But we as women had to build the discipline and the strength to be able to do that. And I thought, my God, this is such a great cause. Like, this is so important. This is so important for my friends who are struggling. And I chose to, it's very in line with the other decisions I've made in my life, to overcome the eating disorder, to, when I met that orthopedic surgeon, to go into preventative care, to show people they can heal their bodies without surgery, and to now, continue to build my company and try to grow myself into the type of woman that can help hold other women accountable, can grow ourselves to be even more responsible, and not use this white privilege, not use this pretty face, not use these things as get out of jail free cards. That's not okay. Like, Carl, you wouldn't get the same privileges I did.
Right.
And for me to pull that card, like, no, how do I earn your respect?
Right.
How do I bring value to other people? And when I saw myself in the news, and I was like, oh my God, like, it was just utter shock, really. Like, here I am my whole life trying to help lift other people up, trying to do the right thing. And then the very women that I was standing for created an entire story about our organization, and went after my medical license, and tried to make it as if I were torturing women, if I were hurting women, if I were doing horrible things. It was the exact opposite. And to see, first of all, it took stages to even digest, like when somebody passes away, there's like denial, and then grief, and then, so in so many ways, there were so many losses at one time. There was like shock, denial, like utter, like, this can't be happening. I just didn't quite understand how people saw me anymore. And eventually it sunk in, and there was acceptance, and there was grief, and there was all of those things. But I guess I know we're running out of time, and I feel like we need a part 2 just to be able to
I think so too, but I want to end with this last question. You mentioned the last time we talked, just you and me, a couple of days ago, you mentioned, I said to you, I think that you were blacklisted because of the work that you've been doing and the work that you were planning to do to help. And you said to me, you felt like it was something else, like the girls, or something else that they were after, or a narrative. But I wanted to know, why did you not think that it was because of your heart and what your goals are? Why do you think it wasn't that? Because clearly they think when someone creates a story or a narrative, they know the players. They know who they really are, even if they want the public to think of them as something else. So I'm just curious as to why you felt like that wasn't the case.
There was something when I was growing up. I think it was like Quack Watch or something, and I used to always think to myself, when I've made it onto Quack Watch, I know I've made it. And the reason was because the people that typically do actually influence change, that actually do stir the pot and like help people think differently and are willing to stand for something, are the people that typically are gone after, you know.
Right.
And I don't think that your assumption is wrong. You know, I think that the organization that I was a part of, the things we were standing for, I mean, everything that our companies created, everything that Keith created, everything that our company and XOSO created, and the multiple other companies that we were working to build were centered around critical thinking, questioning things, self-empowerment, taking responsibility,
Right.
you know, being people that create good stuff in the world and are willing to stand against power and control, greed, power and control, you know, things that would suppress other people, you know. And
the last two, let me give you the last 2 minutes. So if you had anything you wanted to say to the world, what would you say? And I'm gonna give you these last 2 minutes to say it. I want you to say it, and of course you got to come back, and so we can have another conversation, because you and I could talk all day, clearly. So I know you got to catch a flight.
Yeah, I do.
Give us 2 minutes. What would you want the world to know if you had 2 minutes? If you could put it in 2 minutes, what would you want the world to know?
Honestly, I just want to tell people you can do it. Like, it's scary, you know, everybody has their opinion. You want this one's approval, that one's approval, you know, you'll spend your whole life trying to make other people happy. Do your best to have the courage to connect to yourself, be honest with what you know, what you don't know, and be willing to do the work to figure out what's right for you. Because otherwise you'll spend your entire life living your life for other people, conforming, and you'll look back and go like, where was I? You know, what did I want to do? What was important to me? And I just want to encourage everybody to have the courage to really look deep inside and find out what those things are that light you up. You know, what are those things that absolutely outrage you? Those are clues, like that your values are being destroyed, that people are encroaching on your freedoms. You know, you just, those two things, you know, find what lights you up and find the things that outrage you. Don't blame other people once you're outraged. You know, be an example. Figure out what's being destroyed and how to uphold it without destroying other people. But you can do it. You know, you can be a force for good, and you can get to know yourself. And it's a process, but just take the first step.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. I really appreciate you doing this and trusting me with this interview, and I hope you come back. We have so much more that we can talk about to help encourage people and wake them up. So I want you to come back whenever you want to, and I just want to say thanks again for doing the Carl Jackson podcast.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the open invitation. It's a big compliment, and it was my pleasure, honestly.
Thank you for watching this incredible interview tonight. I am always grateful when you guys tune in to watch the Carl Jackson podcast, and it's a great feeling and a great moment in time for us here. And I just want to say thank you for watching. And until next time, you guys have an amazing week. God bless.